what if we could then get one of these devices into their home and then another person's home, and all these people would start to move from this disempowered state and truly start to feel empowered. Like, I can be a steward of my own health.
Welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast, brought to you by AmpCoil. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel, and on this show we discuss the common thread survivors share after walking through the fire, the practitioners making a difference, and the treatment modalities that deliver healing back into the hands of the people who need it most. Witness the inspiration we gain by navigating the human experience with grace, humility, and a healthy dose of mistakes. Because part of being human is being beautifully broken. When Aaron and Geneva Bigelow started their healing journey 12 years ago, they believed Lyme disease was going to be a part of their lives forever. Having both worked for many years in the biotech industry, they had tried biofeedback, PEMF, and bioresonance technology, but they weren't getting sustainable results. They eventually found a solution that eliminated the devastating effects of Lyme disease forever. That is when the AmpCoil was born. Now, they used an early prototype to help their family put their lives back together. And at the same time, they knew that the mission was much greater than their own family's wellness because there were so many people suffering. In this episode, you'll hear their incredible pain to power scenario, the why driving this movement, and the vision for the future of AmpCoil, which, as you'll soon learn, is anything but a device company. So today we have Aaron and Geneva Bigelow. I have manifested having them on the podcast before its inception. And I want to talk a little bit first. I want to talk about you being survivors. And that's a real thing. So Geneva, if you could start out, tell me about a time that was hard for you.
Ooh. Oh my goodness. Well, with Aaron and I, when we first met, it started as a fairy tale. And then it went into what most people would consider tragic, but then it had a happy ending. And when I met Aaron, his light just lit up the room. And he was just so charismatic and just such a bright being. I didn't even have to exchange a word with him. I just wanted to be with him and around, his energy and light. And a couple months after we got married, he got supposedly the flu, went down on the couch, but didn't get up for about a month. And during that time, I could see something had shifted in him, and the light in his eyes wasn't there like it was before. And I knew that's something had shifted in his health. And that was probably, of our whole health journey, probably one of the hardest things is looking in my husband's eyes, looking in my daughter's eyes, looking in my own eyes, and seeing that it was like there was a veil that was between me and the light within that person. And it was also one of the most joyful times is when I would see that light start to return too, those little glimpses. And it was something that I would always, even as we were going through our challenges, I would always envision them with that light because I knew that's who they were, and that's who we all are underneath, no matter what we're going through.
Yeah. Let's give the veil a name. If we're going to go to a Western medicine doctor, what are we talking about?
They would, have a label of based on certain collection of symptoms, whether call it chronic fatigue or Lyme or whatever it is, and then usually a medication on top of that. But you can just see when the voltage in the body starts to drop. I mean, that's what keeps us alive, and that's what ignites us is that energy and that light. And so it's one of the most heartbreaking things when you see it go away in somebody, but it's one of the most joyful things when you see it come back.
And Aaron, if you couldn't tell me, what were some of the steps you initially took? What did you think that was going on when you were on that couch, when you thought you had the flu?
Well, it was very interesting for me because I think after 4 or 5 days, I thought, okay, maybe this is mono, which could be kind of more of a long-term type thing. And probably after a week or so, I started thinking about Lyme disease because we actually have been in the holistic health industry for about a decade at that time. And one of our partners that helped us start this whole business talked all over the world on Lyme disease. And I remember the first time I heard her talk about this, and this was about a year before, she talked about how devastating it was, what it did to families and all the things. And this, dating back, this is like 12, 13 years ago. Not a lot of people really knew what Lyme disease was, at least where we live on the West Coast. I remember thinking to myself, gosh, I might never get that. And then I realized within about a week to 10 days, I'm like, wait a minute. These are all the symptoms she was describing. And then, of course, I did like a lot of people do. I went and had a lot of traditional tests done, came back that there was no issue. I was 100% healthy according to their tests. And I thought, well, wait a minute. Am I going crazy here? And they were basically almost convincing me that I was. Like, well, you might want to go see a psychologist. And I'm like, wait a minute. Something's not adding up here. And luckily, being in the industry, we kept looking for other opportunities to really see, one, if it was Lyme. I wasn't even really concerned about the so-called diagnosis. I just wanted to get back on my A game. I'm somebody who, up until that point, got out of bed and was game on from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, which also became a little bit of my demise. We can talk about that later. And so anyway, I think the big thing for me was just starting to realize quite quickly this chasm, even being in the industry, that something so prolific, something so devastating to the body, I'd say, majority of the time, doesn't even get recognized because it hides so well in the body. It's the kind of like, that's what they call the mystery disease. And, the people that go through it and the ones that are close to them are suffering on such a deep level. And the rest of the world kind of looks at you like, well, you look fine.
Where did you go first when where you're looking out at, literally a hand on a ship to help you out of the water? Where did you look?
Well, actually, right in my wife's eyes was the first, partly because she was an advanced health practitioner in the holistic health world with other biofeedback technology that was definitely helping with some of the symptoms. And it was just giving relief. But that was huge. And then it got to a point where it was almost like she couldn't give me enough to keep me going. From an energetic standpoint, it was like my battery just kept dying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we would, we did all the ozone and the light therapy and the biofeedback therapy and the submersion tanks. And he was up to 100 supplements a day. And we did the Rife, holding onto the probes. And we didn't ever do the antibiotics. We had just heard too many stories of once it's past the bloodstream and it had already crossed the blood-brain barrier and the antibiotics aren't going to get there. So we decided it's not even worth it. People would temporarily get relief and then it would come back and it would be even worse.
Unless they catch it right away.
Yeah. And we knew that it just wasn't about a spirochete. The spirochete wasn't the evil one that we were trying to rid the body of. It was the whole body needed a reset. There was a reason why his body had gotten to that place in the first place, that his immune hadn't been able to respond. So we knew it was like a whole body makeover that he needed. And so we had seen some results from the quantum biofeedback. It really helped him stay alive, but we knew it wasn't going to get him to the finish line.
Can you just go for somebody who has no idea what you're talking about when you say biofeedback or quantum biofeedback?
Sure.
Can you speak to those just a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, basically energy medicine, working with frequencies, delivering specific frequencies to the body. And with the quantum biofeedback, it's delivered through electrical, like through a head harness. And so that's the delivery system of the frequencies.
Well, amazing. Now, when did you, so Aaron, when did you start to see a shift or the veil parting? When did you start to feel some relief?
Well, it only happened for sometimes at best hours at a time. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know that I pieced together a full day of being in that healthy vibration that I know was my true nature. I don't think I felt that for, really until I'd say about 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there was a good close to 10 years where I don't think I had a 24-hour period where I felt above 70%.
Yeah. And by that time, we had already spent about $250,000, which may seem like a lot, but come to find out, a lot of other people are spending that kind of money too, trying to get well. I just got a text the other day from a lady, and she said, the last 6 months I've spent $100,000 and I'm at best 20% better. Help me. And so, our story is really not a unique story when it comes to people's experience of what a lot of people are going through, and some people even more significant. I mean, my daughter started to get, a Lyme-induced autism type of response, and I had gone, my left side went completely paralyzed. And at that point is when we said, I think from when our story turned from the fairy tale beginning of us meeting and just, instantly knowing that we were supposed to be together. And 3 months later, he asked me to marry him, and we were just totally in love. And our first daughter came right away. And then all of a sudden, 3 months later, he's on the couch. And then we had 10 years of that kind of tragic time for us. But really the tragedy, I would say, shifted when we stopped saying, why is this happening to us? And we started asking, what is this trying to teach us? Mm-hmm. What are we trying to be shown here? And though we physically didn't feel better in our mind, in our heart, and in our spirit, we regained a whole new, something was ignited in us that literally fueled and started to fuel our physical body into this place of things started just happening around us. We started meeting the right people. We started having a sense of intuition and knowingness about things and promptings. And that's when we started to get this sense. We said, we've been in the health industry for this long. We're connected to a lot of people that know all the engineers and people that build technologies. And our living room looks like Einstein's living room. We have devices everywhere. We've tried them all. And we know what works within each device. What would happen if we took the best of each one of these and started to merge it into one system? What would happen then? And then we said, if that works for us, well, then can you imagine then being able to take all these other families that we're online chatting with and all our friends hear about and we get calls on, what if we could then get one of these devices into their home and then another person's home, and all these people would start to move from this disempowered state, this helpless state that we were feeling at that time, and truly start to feel empowered. Like, I can actually be a steward of my own health. And that's what we really wanted, is to get ourselves back and then empower people to be stewards of their own health, and then start to create wellness within their families and communities. And that's really the mission, really, that we feel like we're on.
And just talking about a mission, I'm going to throw a curveball here, but I think maybe we might have watched one too many Back to the Future episodes because the flex capacitor definitely showed up in our life. My wife here is also, I kind of call her the scientist, and she kind of looks like Doc sometimes, but the hair doesn't stick up straight the same way. But she'll come in and say, oh my gosh, I figured out how to put these pieces together. And her eyes are bulging, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And guess who gets to be the person who's the test pilot?
Yeah.
That was me.
Yeah.
But it all starts somewhere, right? Yeah. And when you feel as bad as I felt, or as bad as so many people feel when they go through this, you're a willing participant, because you're like, anything's better than this. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to do something that no one's ever done, go ahead and do it on me, because I'm not going. I'm not going any further down than this.
Yeah.
So we've got Doc Brown on the floor of the bathroom. He's just hit his head on the toilet, and you guys have woken up and you found the flux capacitor.
Yeah.
There's on some element, it is like a Hollywood story.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. When I look back on it now, I'm like, how did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we can't even take credit for it. It's like it showed up, and we just paid attention to the promptings, and just happened to be in this related industry for so long. So we knew the right people to bring it all together,
up and then continue to help it evolve.
So I think what's interesting is what you said is you just started to change the questions you were asking yourself, as opposed to why is this happening to us? And it's what can we build from it? What can we make from it? And what came out of it was the AmpCoil.
Absolutely, because all of our experiences for everybody, no matter what you're going through, they will come to benefit others. And there's a deep peace when you're suffering, when you know that suffering is for a purpose, it's like the pressure valve starts to get released, because you know it's not for naught. It's actually happening for a reason. And then when you start to realize that, wow, what I'm going through can actually benefit other people too, then it just, it really shifts the entire experience.
Mm-hmm. So, and you said it was you lost 10 years of marriage. You were struggling for this, rocky road. You're climbing up and down through these peaks and valleys. And was there a part of you that just wanted to relax and go be well for a while, as opposed to trying to, create this new device that is going to change the world? I mean, was there a part of you that just wanted to say, wait, let's just give ourselves some space here to do this?
Well, of course, we were always hoping for those moments. But
for sure.
It was, in looking back, it was really the training ground for us. And for me, I don't feel like we lost anything in our marriage. For me, it's like that gave such a strong foundation for our marriage now, because it was the time that I got to learn about unconditional love, and where my heart was broken open to compassion, and really just how to love a human when they're in a place where they can't even really give back in any way. And he was always, whenever possible, he would. I always knew that was in him. But when you're going on years and years and years of just supporting and caretaking, it's challenging. However, I just always saw him well. And I think that's one of the biggest things in marriage or in any relationship, is to always see the person in their highest form. Like, that's, to me, the greatest gift that we can give each other, is to always see each other in our best self, even when we can't see it ourselves. And if we have somebody dedicated and so loyal in our lives to be next to us and always see our highest self, it will manifest. It will manifest.
Well, I'm so proud of you guys for, persevering the way you did, and look at where you are now and today. And not only have you walked through the valley of the shadow of death, but now you're truly leading other people out. And it's an incredible journey that you're inviting other people to join you.
Yeah. And it's that invitation, because people say, oh, you're saving so many lives. We don't save lives. People save their own lives. We're just giving them a tool to save their own life. And that's the whole thing, is like, if you really want to have a far-reaching impact, you have to empower other people. You can't do it for them, And so that's the thing that we really envisioned is, and especially coming as a health practitioner, I was so used to caretaking and wanted to just to caretake. And that was such a big shift for me to say, no, I can really help more people if I empower them to do it themselves. And then guess what? They can turn around and do it for their family. And then their family is now helping other families in their community. Part of when with developing AmpCoil was part of the vision, is to have something that was so simple to use, really easy to learn, because a lot of the other technologies, they would take sometimes, 3, 6, up to a year to really learn how to master. The AmpCoil you can learn how to use in an hour, and it can be used by the person who is going through their health challenges, because I was always the one having to do it for him. And I wanted something where he could go like this and push play and do it himself. Mm. That's the first step. So he could start to, feel that empowerment again.
Yeah. Well, and, the big thing that looking back over the last few years since this movement, it really is a movement. It's not about a device, is being able to help people with the heavy lifting. So much when you end up with something like this, it feels like there's so much heavy lifting involved that you want to give up. And you're attempting to do all these different things that a practitioner or a doctor will recommend. And if you're not doing them all in just a certain way, sometimes you go backwards more than you go forward. So it's easy to feel like, hey, I'm done, or I'm just going to lie here. And without even knowing it, the feedback we get consistently is people sometimes after a couple sessions feel like, whoa, somebody else is doing the heavy lifting for me, so I can do this. Mm-hmm. I can do the rest. Mm-hmm. And then we just attempt to give them a safe container and great support to help them with those pieces as well, if that's what they need. And it becomes doable. It's like they can see the summit of the mountain, and before they were stuck at the very bottom, and every time they took a step, they would fall back
with
down.
Complicated protocols. But now we say, just lay down. You don't even have to get out of bed. Just put the coil on you and press play. And then all of a sudden you keep doing that, and all of a sudden your brain fog, would start to lift, and you can get out of bed and you're energized, and you go, okay, now what?
Well, I can see how that came out of the role of almost, it's like when you're describing it to me, the person who gets relief from this, the system that you've created, the AmpCoil being an individual modality, it really gives the caregiver a break. It allows that person who's sick to be with the therapy they need. Well, maybe that caregiver can go out for 2 hours and go grab lunch, or go get a coffee, or go get some sunshine and a piece of grass.
Yes. And there's a whole level of healing that starts to happen in your relationships, because all of a sudden, when you're dealing with somebody that doesn't feel well, they're pretty grumpy most of the time.
What are you talking about?
Right. And so then when you start to enjoy being around them, and there's a healing that starts to happen. And Wellness for Humanity is a foundation that has gathered a lot of statistics from people using the AmpCoil. So after, I think it's 90 days of use, mm-hmm. they go through a whole questionnaire and gather statistics. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions is tracking the improvement in the relationships. And I can't exactly remember the number, but on their homepage, on their site, you should check out the statistics. It's just phenomenal. A 90% reduction in pain, and their anxiety and sleep. And
this is across a field of several families that all had 3 or more people with Lyme disease in their family. So it's consistent. Mm-hmm. And that's the other part, that we're still just blessed that almost everyone that comes to us, we've been able to get out of that darkness, so to speak, and at least feel like they're on the path that maybe they thought they were never going to be on again. It's pretty amazing when you can get yourself back and then reach out to others and see how much they transform. And that's what gets me out of bed mm-hmm. every day, no matter what else is going on. It's like, wow, mm-hmm. this is good stuff.
I on the other side of it, being someone that's looking at the AmpCoil from the outside and looking at the technology and the company, and what's it like for you guys to hear stories from families with 2 and 3 and 4 people that have had their lives turned around?
I could hear them every single day and never get sick of it. I mean, are you kidding? And we know we're just getting started.
Yeah, for me, every time I hear it, I feel it's very healing for me, because when you go through this long-term chronic illness, for yourself or with somebody else, it's kind of traumatizing in a way. Even when you feel better or the other person feels better, you almost have a PTSD response. It's that significant what you go through. And so when I hear these stories, it heals that part of me of what we went through, because it's like it was not for naught. Like it really served a purpose. And that's just how this is how our journey has served a purpose, but everybody's journey serves a purpose. Everybody's.
So you have a movement you've created and a community, and you have a very effective device. And so what's going to be the challenge with this next evolution as more and more people start to hear about it?
It's interesting. We're very fortunate. We've had this thought all along that because of our previous ties and because we know that there's people suffering all over the world, that we would want to develop the technology that could go overseas and know that it would work with the different power conversions and limited support and all those things to make it really work. And we've just been asked to do our first international trip. We're going over to Australia in about 2 weeks. And just realizing that, you go halfway across the world, people still have the same problems. Yet we get to work through different issues because we're going to be working with a different healthcare system. So, understanding how to work within that and play in their sandbox. But for me, I get excited about that because there's an opportunity to shift in other places where people aren't finding the help they really need. And there's potentially over 500,000 people in that country, who would have thought halfway across the world, that would be suffering from something like Lyme disease. And so it's just knowing that you can do something that is going to have an impact globally is like next level. And I've always been the type of personality that is like, okay, what can I do that's literally game changing? So in a way, I was probably the right person to be bit by, we'll just say, a bug that challenged us to say, okay, yeah, we're getting our lives back on track. Now, how do we get to serve others? And I don't think that ever ends. I think it's just the beginning.
And really to reach a lot of people, we know that continuing to miniaturize the device, continuing to try and get the price point down as low as possible. So, we've been from the first engineer that we started working with 5 years ago, and the device was...
It was the size of a couch, basically.
A small couch. I mean, it was pretty big.
Yeah.
And he continued to get it down, into a smaller Pelican case box, and we've continued to have multiple engineers after that. And so that's what we really want to do, is just getting it smaller and lighter, and continuing to reduce the price as much as possible so it can get into as many hands as possible. We also have the foundation as well. And so people make donations to the foundation, and then we get devices out to families that are not able to currently, that have been, financially devastated in a way, and they don't have the ability to purchase it themselves. So they get the device for 4 months, and they get their family well enough to then pass the device on to somebody else. And so that's been really beautiful. And it's a sustainable model because it gets them well enough that they can then turn around and have enough of a down payment to finance a device for themselves. And so it's not the charity model of saying, oh, we'll just do this for you. It's, again, the theme of empowerment, saying, I'm going to give you a bridge to help you get up on your feet. Okay. And then now you can do it yourself, and then you pass it on to the next person, empower them. I mean, that's really just getting the device portable and low enough price, and then just continuing to, work with people's mindsets, because a lot of people call in and they're still in the old mindset of, they're on their antibiotics and they think that the spirochete is the problem, or I have MS, and they're so caught in the labels of the disease. And it's like, they don't realize that it's really, it's a full body makeover, because you can get rid of the spirochete, but it doesn't mean that you're going to feel better, because you still have fungus, you still have parasites, you still have heavy metals, you still have mycoplasma on your brain, you still have all these other things. And so really shifting that focus to that wellness and enhancing the body's energetic capacity and the voltage of their cells and raising their vibration so that they can sustain this. I mean, that's where it's at on all levels, from the water that we drink to the music that we listen to everything in that vibrational state, because it all affects us. And when our vibration drops, our cell voltage drops. And right when we're down, if we're normally at a 70 millivolts of our cell wall, when we start to drop down, that's where the parasites live. That's where the fungus, the colds, the flu, and eventually when you're down approximately around 20 millivolts is where cancer is. So you have a choice of where you're going to be on that scale, and you can see it by your cell voltage. And it's whatever happens to enter the point in that realm. It's just, so wiping the label and measuring it by your energetic vibration. And so it's a different conversation with people. And a lot of people are there that when they call in, a lot of people are not. But then there's also people that when they call in, they go, I've tried this other way of thinking and this other perception. Let me try something different.
Just as she's saying this, speaking of a different conversation, if you can imagine if you were to go out to dinner with us, what our dinner conversations are about, these are our conversations, even on date night.
Yeah.
So it's because this is everything to us. And, to be able to see the shift in our own lives and then be able to help others. And, we mentioned our daughter who showed up with autistic-like symptoms. And as a parent, as a father, and as a mother, it's one thing when these things happen to you, but when you watch your daughter and her eyes are literally rolling in the back of her head and she is going to convulsions and literally is like foaming at the mouth, you're like, okay, you can mess with me, but don't mess with my child. And she was a huge, huge reason that in the early days when it was challenging to put all these pieces together, that we said, this is a calling. We need to do this. I mean, just look at our daughter here. When you have a child that doesn't have the means to really ask for what they need because they don't even know what's happening to them.
Yeah.
That's when you do the deep work to find a solution. And I know I speak for any parent that is seeing their child suffer would want to do the same. We just happened to be a couple that happened to be in the right industry and had enough experience to help put all the pieces together.
And at the beginning, when you first asked that question about what was one of the most challenging times, I think for me, another one of those was as a parent, watching my child suffer and start to slip down and not knowing what to do or how to help her. Having that helpless feeling it's just beyond heartbreaking as a parent. To know, like every time somebody calls in and they're a parent and they've got something on with their child. I mean, I have this picture of myself with a coil and it's like, and I have it up in my hand like this. And it's like that feeling of, mom empowered feeling. And now I can, something goes on with my child, put them to bed at night, throw the coil on them. And it's like, yes, I don't have to feel that anymore.
Well, and just to take it one step further, we talk about our daughter who's now 12. Keep in mind, this is a child with kind of, again, autistic-like symptoms that rarely will speak to somebody unless she's known them for years, would never put herself in front of a video camera, would never do anything in public that might draw attention to herself. And so we talked to her one day about possibly doing a video about her transformation with the AmpCoil. And she thought about it and said, you know what? I'll do it because I don't want to see other kids have to suffer. So I'll do it.
She said, Mommy, everybody deserves to be happy.
And so she did a video, which is on our site, and her name's Bella. I mean, as a parent, it just really speaks to, what you're willing to do. And when you see that kind of effect on the other end, yeah, it's priceless.
So we have this So we have a new mindset, and it's almost like there's a new paradigm that's available for people. And I think, Geneva, you mentioned when people call in, sometimes I can imagine one of the challenges is to ask them to consider this new, what we're offering right now, I would say, is disease management with our current healthcare insurance. And then we've got some of these other things that nobody would ever be told about, that would almost be more of a healthcare line. How do you start the conversation about getting people to, open up the space to invest in something like this that would be in their home, that they'd use every day?
Well, I think first off, it's through experience most of the time. Fortunately, we do have people in all 50 states and all the provinces through Canada, and I think 10 different countries now. So there's a good chance that wherever you are, there's somebody within a couple hours where you can go in and have an experience. And we have what we call an AmpCoil lounge here at our headquarters, and we have 5 AmpCoils going all the time. We're a little town of about 5,000 people. And to watch the transformation that happens even after 1 or 2 sessions consistently, especially if somebody has a long-term chronic issue, is beyond words. So a lot of times, whatever their preconceived ideas or not aware of what something like this may or may not be, we have a great website and they can do the research and do all those things. But a lot of times it's having that felt experience to where they feel a big shift and they go, whoa, I feel different. And this, through the biofeedback system, actually gave me some feedback that made me realize I'm not crazy, because these things that I thought I was dealing with are showing up here. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes very real. They realize how simple it is. And then all of a sudden the thought of, oh, wait, you mean I can finance this device and use it from home for under $150 a month? I can do that. I mean, I spend that every time I go to, yeah. And for those who have been on this journey, that's a drop in the bucket compared to what we have spent.
And that was part of the vision too, was financial wellness, because we lost everything. I mean, we literally all we had left was our car. We didn't even have a home.
Yeah,
that's how much.
Literally toured a homeless shelter one day.
And there's other people that happens to as well. And so it's really hard to recover financially if you're spending money so much on doctor appointments and supplements and this therapy and ongoing. So, even if you're going to buy multiple devices, so when you look at the AmpCoil, it's 5, 6, 7 devices all into one. So instead of spending $60,000, $70,000 on devices, you can merge it in and have it, $8,000. And then what people find too is they're not spending money on all these other things anymore. And so it really, really becomes, you start to regain your financial wellness again. And so when we have a conversation with people when they first call in, first of all, like Aaron said, it's either about experiencing it or it's about they've heard about it from somebody else that has experienced it and they've witnessed the lights turn back on in them. Or sometimes it's a conversation that you have with them that I find is when they realize, why are all the other things that they've been doing not working? Right? Because the focus is usually when you're sick, you're desperate, and you're always looking forward saying, what do I do next? What do I do next? Instead of saying, why is what I just did not work? Right? And that's what that's when I finally started to realize, putting these pieces together, is that it can't just be bloodstream. Okay. All these supplements, all these other, types of therapies, it's bloodstream. And when stuff goes on in our bodies to this degree, it's beyond the bloodstream. It's crossed the blood-brain. It's in our hollow organs. It's in our joints, and even if you don't have Lyme or any of these other things, it goes there. And so you need something that goes beyond the bloodstream. So you're only going to get partial results as long as it stays bloodstream. And that's why we chose the magnetic field, because a magnetic field bypasses through the entire body all the way through your cells. And so that's one of the biggest things when it comes to, why things don't work is you have to create something through a magnetic field And then why we chose working with frequencies is because frequencies addresses everything. Whatever kind of interference that you have in your body, there's a vibrational quality to it. There's a very specific frequency. It can be measured. It's just a simple physics formula.
You guys have some wonderful, wonderful videos on your website, some TED Talks that really go into a deep dive on those that I know if people wanted to check out AmpCoil.com, they could go do some great research. I know I saw the one fascinating on turning the sand into pictures through frequency, which I absolutely love. And there was actually the music therapist who was working on killing certain cells through certain frequencies and just boom, boom, boom. You have about 4 or 5 videos that really go into the science.
Yeah. And there's frequencies for every nutrient. There's frequencies for every organ in the body, for brain waves, for everything. So the other misnomer is that, if let me just try this. Let me try supplements, or let me try ozone, or let me try this or that. Well, the thing is, you have to do them all, and you have to do them all at the same time to really get results. And so that's why we said, well, how do we do that?
Yeah.
The only way to really do that we found is through frequency. So frequency over a magnetic field, so it goes anywhere and everywhere in the body. And when people really start to get that, then they start to go, oh, no wonder why I only got partial results in what I'm doing. And so now all of a sudden, instead of this frantic search of trying to figure out what to do, it starts to narrow down, because you go, no, I'm not going to try that because that only goes bloodstream. No, I'm not going to try that because that only addresses one thing. And so you really start to realize it. It comes really down to this essence. I mean, of course, there's a mental, emotional, there's a different bodies on that level, but even that is frequency as well. So.
Yeah, the other part that we knew was hugely important was to find a way to do this that was in harmony with the body and didn't kick yourself to the curb while you're going through it. Mm-hmm. So we knew we had to do it in a layered approach. And so we were very fortunate that we had an incredible holistic doc that came in and helped us figure out how to do that. Mm-hmm. And it's incredible how all these pieces really lined up to allow somebody to feel like, okay, I can go on this journey and I want to continue on this journey. And the more, and the more they use it, the more they want to use it. So it's not a have to, they get to. It's kind of like going and getting a massage. Wow, I feel better every time I do this, or majority of the time. So I want to keep going down this road.
I had probably done, I'm one of those people, I had done everything, and I had been through cancer, advanced metastasized cancer, Lyme disease, chronic infection, heavy metals. I mean, it's such a sad little funny story. I can make it funny, but I had tried all the things, all the ozone and all the saunas, and I've had my AmpCoil since November 19th. And, I got on the phone with my mom last week, and my mom, who knows me and knows my aura, is we have a tendency to, I think you mentioned, when we're tired and we're a little fatigued and we're carrying that pain, we tend to let out maybe the grumpier side on those closest to us. So she probably gets it worse than anybody else. But she just said, she goes, the last couple times you've been on the phone with me, you've been so happy. And I am. I feel a measurable difference in my joy all day long, because my pain's way down and my energy's way up. And it's something that it plays into all the little activities in my day. It's how I get out of bed in the morning. It's how I go to the bathroom. It's how I pick up things off the floor. It's the little things, how I get out of the car, that are just, it's like I'm taking less effort with all those things. So the energy that I have to take forward and the things I really want to do in my life are just, they're fuller. And it's just, I'm so excited for the next 3 months and the next 6 months. And as I said to a friend the other day, it's an exciting time to be alive, that we can have access to these things.
Yeah.
Well, and
you're more fully in your divine design, and so that's your design. You're just more fully being you, the grumpy isn't you. It's something's, incoherent in the field. And so this is you.
But I listen to that now. I can hear that. And do you know what I mean? Now that it's weird. I don't know. It's an intuition, but after even using the AmpCoil for a couple months, 2.5 months, I can hear a grumpy in somebody else, and I know it's not them. I'm very aware that it's something else. I'm like, that's not you. That's pain.
Oh, yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, and I know we're about to wrap this up, and I just want to give huge gratitude to people like yourself, Freddie, because, there's a handful of people that go through a journey like this and truly choose to do something profound with it. And I know you're somebody that has chosen to do that. And that's why it was so easy to say yes to this interview possibility, because we said, wow, here's somebody who really wants to take the torch and run with it and not see others suffer if there's anything that he can do. So it really feels like, a kindred spirit. And it's just, and you've done the work.
We're on the same mission.
Yeah. So.
Really.
Same mission, different coasts. It was literally, I'll tell you, I was standing on 51st Street, and my brain fog was so cloudy, I could barely think. And I was looking at a statue of the Virgin Mary. It was snowing, and I was so upset with myself because of how bad I felt. And I was just sitting there, and I was like, you know what? If I ever get back to baseline, I'm going to show up as the guide I wished I had found at this point.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's, I'm like, because I didn't find it. And I looked and I looked and I looked and I didn't find it. And that's when my health started to turn around, when I was like, well, I'm just going to be that for somebody else.
Yep. That was that point for us too. Absolutely.
And now it's happening all over in spades everywhere, more things than I could ever have dreamed of. So, and you guys did the same thing. You said you changed your question. That was the most profound thing that I heard today, was you changed the question, started asking a different question, and different answers started showing up. So I think that's beautiful. And I know we're going to have many more of these. I think this is a great spot to wrap it up. I want to ask you guys both. I want to ask you a couple questions to close out the show. I'm going to go with Geneva first. Geneva, what does it mean to you to be beautifully broken?
To be beautifully broken, I don't feel broken. And I didn't, even when I was going through what I went through, the times that I feel broken is the times when I don't feel the spirit that is what binds, that completes me. So anytime I feel spirit in me and I'm aware of that presence, I feel whole. And so it really doesn't matter what's going on the outside, how tragic things may appear, or even what my emotional state is. When I have the awareness of the presence of spirit in my life and in my heart and in my body, my mind and soul, I feel whole.
It's beautiful. Aaron, you ready?
Yeah, I'm just like, wow, I get to be with this person.
Oh.
Well, I can feel it I can feel it again on the other coast. I can feel the love between you guys. So Aaron, I have a different question for you. I want you to leave the audience with a question. And I want you to give people something they can think about, to really question whatever it is about what they think is possible in their vitality, their health and wellness, maybe to examine, some current things in their life, or examine their priorities. Give us a question just to ponder.
So if we're talking about somebody who is stuck and they feel like they've gone down that hole that we've talked about a lot in this call, what I would say to them is, are you ready to write a new story? And if they're willing to take a moment and say yes, that's all I need to hear, or all we need to hear, because we can write a new script with them for a beautiful story that they didn't even know was possible. And all they have to do is say, yes, I'm ready to change this story that I've been living for however long it's been. It's really that simple.
Beautiful. Guys, thank you so much for being here today. It was an honor to have you and start this journey off. It's going to be really exciting.
You are so lovely, Freddie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we look forward to
Beautiful
connecting
stuff.
with you again.
Now, before we walk away from this episode, I want to say what the AmpCoil is. Simply put, the AmpCoil is an easy-to-use wellness tool that supports physical, emotional, and mental well-being. Now, here's how I like to break it down. The AmpCoil delivers sound frequencies from its intuitive software called the Better Guide app. Through a powerful amplifier, which runs into a magnetic coil, this is based on Tesla technology, the machine generates a targeted pulsed electromagnetic field, known as a PEMF, that penetrates deep into the body. Now, the same PEMF waves are used to boost stem cells for NASA's astronauts and to heal racehorses, maintaining top performance. Now, this magnetic wave carries sound frequencies on its back, much like an expert surfer navigating smooth waves from the ocean. And the healing tones travel through the skin, hollow organs, and deep into the cell wall where your body needs it most. Now, if we go a little deeper, the Better Guide app, we could think of this as the brain power of the AmpCoil. Includes voice analysis biofeedback. That is the same technology used by the FBI to tell if you're lying or if you're telling the truth. Now, this allows the AmpCoil to deliver personalized programming that supports your body for that day's needs. Now, if you can imagine striking a tuning fork next to another one, as they begin to vibrate at the same frequency, this is also known as entrainment, this is what's happening as your body's natural healing mechanisms are turned back on. You simply hold the coil on that body part, select the journey for the day, and you passively sit back, relax, and enjoy your upgrade. The reality is, none of these technologies are new, from the magnets found in a MRI machine in the hospital, to the frequencies an opera singer generates to shatter glass, to PEMF pulled out of our space program, or the voice analysis used by the FBI. With AmpCoil, this is just the first time someone has combined them in the perfect package. So if this sounds like an episode of Star Trek, I would actually challenge you to buckle your seatbelts, because it's an exciting time to be alive, and the future is now. And so it begins. I couldn't be happier with how high we just set the bar for episode 1. Aaron and Geneva, a big universal thank you for your openness, your mission, and the good things you are doing in the world. We need more of you. This episode of the Beautifully Broken podcast was brought to you by our sponsor, AmpCoil, upgrading the vibration of hearts, minds, and bodies all over the world. Thank you for tuning in, friends. Now, if you enjoyed today's show, head on over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review and grab a download. That is like giving me a virtual thumbs up that we are doing it right. Now, if you want to connect with me, shoot me a message on Instagram at FreddieSetGo and send me a message for a topic or a guest that you would love to have on here. That's it for today, my friends. Our closing: the world is hurting. We need you at your very best. So take the steps today to always be upgrading. And remember, while life is painful sometimes, putting the fractured pieces back together, that is a beautiful process. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel. This is the Beautifully Broken podcast. Namaste.